Media is falling apart, and as it crumbles, a void is opening, a void that we intend to fill. The big legacy news networks currently average just 1.2 million viewers a weeknight, and those numbers are only going to get lower. Legacy media is dying, and the younger generation has moved on. Legacy media panders. Legacy media lies. Legacy media does not know what the truth is, and they don't care about it. Legacy media is a dumpster fire. This is why we few in our wild imaginations have started the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Our goal is to take down the legacy media giant of the last 50 years with our 5 stones. We started in 2016 with our flagship show, Cross Politic. Since those small beginnings, we now air on DirecTV. Our broader podcast network now gets over 4 million downloads a year. And our Fight Laugh Feast pub, which includes TV shows like This America, The Rowdy Christian's Guide, Pastors in Politics, and As the Lord Pleases, with your support, many more to come. Our goal is to become the flagship new media 2.0 network over the next 50 years and take over nightly news, sports, sitcoms, hunting shows, and more, all conveniently stored for you in our Fight Laugh Feast pub. We're already reaching the next generation through our podcast shows on YouTube, X, and our pub, while also tapping into legacy media audiences by airing our shows on TV through DirecTV and Xfinity. We have made a lot of progress with some duct tape and a good bit of intuition and a lot of sweat. And now we need your support more than ever. The TV networks have had such a negative impact on our households, and we're trying, by the grace of God, to put a stop to that. We have the opportunity. We just need the army. Now more than ever, we need you to join our pub to help us reach our goal of 1 million pub supporters in the next 5 years. There's no way around it. Competing with Fox and the Alphabet networks without money is virtually impossible. It's cheap for you to join. And when you do, you're combining your small monthly support with a growing army of like-minded Christians. We have thousands, we need millions. So if you want more of the Alphabet network's misinformation and lies, don't join. But if you want to give us a mere 5 stones, then please join the pub, and together we will take a swing at the head of big media, all the while fighting, laughing, and feasting to the glory of God.
Go ahead, give him a check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Can they hear us? Should they be able to hear us now?
Yeah, they should.
Okay.
Can you hear
Go
us?
ahead and let him hear.
Great.
Sorry about that, guys.
Hang on. Reboot. I want my music. I just like starting off.
There
with
you
music.
go. Hi, guys.
Yes.
We're
Here.
so good at this.
Boom. Yes.
There we
I feel
go.
better.
I think I saw Shirley on here.
Hey, y'all.
Hi, Shirley.
Thanks for hanging on. We just had a little, we're in a studio. Technical difficulties happen, but thank you for hanging on and joining Waterbreak
Yes, thanks for waiting for
with
us.
Water Girl and Water Boy. You guys, some of you guys might have missed our introduction commercial. We have this really cool way we can insert commercials in the show. So make sure you join the club and support our work. Go to fightlabfeast.com for that. Also, we will be in Fort Worth, Texas. My wife, if the creek don't rise, should be with us at our conference, Prodigal America, in Fort Worth, Texas. And we do a pre-business conference as part of that. And that's Thursday. And then if you're interested in being a corporate partner, we do a corporate partner reception on Wednesday night. So would love to see you guys there. Sign up, email us if you have any questions at contact@fightlabfeast.com. And if you want to be in a conversation with me and Annie, you can email us specifically at wrenchmedia@gmail.com. If we haven't answered an email, don't worry, we'll get there. Sometimes it just takes a week or two because, we got life and kids and all that stuff. So.
Oh, well, and with what we're talking about today, I've been emailed several times.
Already.
Okay,
about
so
this subject. That's
this
right.
subject. So we are answering an email today.
Yeah. So the topic of today is how to make babies. Just kidding. Deja vu. It's actually pregnant women and health and fitness. We've gotten obviously tons of questions about that.
Yes.
And Annie's gotten millions of questions about that over the years.
Oh yeah.
And everything. But I'm a pretty good pro about this too. I've been around 3 pregnancies with you, and you've trained me well.
You should.
So.
One of these times, we should just announce a topic, and then you should just.
I should just handle it from
do
there.
the whole hour.
You guys, I used to teach.
Pay money to listen to that.
I used to teach basketball camps. I'm still a basketball coach, but I used to teach camps, and my favorite stretch was what I end up calling the Gabe stretch.
Yes,
I was like, it's the Gabe stretch, where all the kids just lay on the floor and then just spread their arms out and legs out and just lay there for. It's usually about 30 seconds. It's a good long stretch.
I think the longer the better. Probably, the more effective the Gabe wrench stretches.
It worked so well, and it's such a good
it to some of my clients.
feeling.
They like it.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about women, pregnancy, and health and fitness. And there's we could probably do 3, 4, 5 shows on this.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot.
We know if you have questions, again, wrenchmedia@gmail.com. If you have any questions, we'll either answer them in email or answer them on a future show coming up. But before we kind of get into the topic, Josiah actually has a question for you, baby.
Yes.
His wife Renee, spelled R-I-N-E. That's wonderful. He's asking for beginners. Where does Renee begin when any and all diets for her personally are here today and gone tomorrow? That's amazing question. And one of the reasons why we started Waterbreak is because we want Christians to be grounded in principle and not in fads when we think through these things.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. Yeah, really good question. So short story, I would say, first off, we did an episode at the start. I can't remember which number it was, but it was titled something like, "Where do you even start?" So if you go back, Renee, to like episode 2 or episode 3, somewhere in there, you can re-listen to that one or listen to that one. And we just talk about kind of the exact thing, like, where do I even start to just move towards more health? And it's just basic things like unprocessing the food in your life, moving towards more protein. And then we give some, I think, at least good baseline practical tips beyond that. So I would listen to that. That's a great place to start. I would also listen to the episode we did on fad diets, because that will give you a lot of insights into kind of the pros of some of those diets as well as some of the cons. And I think we tried to give a very fair assessment of those. And then lastly, and I have plugged this book before, if you really want to deep dive, a book that I think is really one of the best out there right now, really laying out what good long-term nutrition is. I would look up the book The Way by Joel Green. It's fantastic. So
he's not talking about Jesus. He's talking about food.
The Way. Yes. Yeah. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you referencing our episode on fad diets.
Yeah.
Was really good because we also made a lot of qualifications there.
And keep listening because these things are going to keep coming up.
Yeah.
You know, you just can't, man. There's so many
You can't
things.
answer all the questions and angles in one
That's
episode.
what I tell Gabe all the time.
Right.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's so much I want to talk about in general and even in just each episode. And it's just like, you know, it's just going to take time. So keep listening. Listen to those 2 episodes and look up Joel Green. Look up the book, The Way. It's excellent. It's really, really good.
So let's get in. And as you guys have questions, we go through, we'll try to pull them out and answer questions as we're going through here. But let's get into how do women get pregnant first? No,
Number one, how are babies born?
No. Where do women start? Where do pregnant women start with, fitness and health?
Okay, well, so first this is a huge question. I think generally speaking in America, we have gotten this whole concept really, really wrong in a lot of ways in terms of what does health look like in a pregnancy, what is generally, what things are considered to be healthy, safe, good things for women to do versus what are considered not healthy or like taboo things for women to do. And it's baffled me for a long time. So like we're in this place right now where it's generally seen as like kind of normal and I guess good for a pregnant woman to really not exercise at all, which is sort of the standard, not move her body in any capacity usually, because you're a little uncomfortable and you're getting heavier and you're carrying a baby and all those things. And
isn't there also like tied to that, like you want to be careful,
there could be some fear. There could be some fear there, and we can address that. I think that's less and less because I think it's been so debunked. Some of those crazy, like you can't get your heart rate over 100, or you can't lift more than 25 pounds, which is the weight of like a small toddler.
Which you'll be carrying once it's born.
Those are so outdated that I think the fear is less and less. Although there still could be some fear there, but more than anything, I think it's just what's culturally accepted. So it's like, don't be active, eat whatever you want, and that's considered whatever you feel like, whatever you want, you're eating for 2, you have cravings, whatever it is.
Eat what your body tells you.
And that's like considered normal and kind of just part of pregnancy. And generally like, that's what we do versus, and then women are like, but I'm not having deli meat, so
I'm not eating selfish.
And then she tells herself or genuinely believes like, this is me really taking care of my baby. Because obviously when you're pregnant, you are not just in it for yourself anymore. You are responsible for yourself and a whole separate person that you're growing. So it's a very, it's not just about you anymore.
I had a friend, his daughter's pregnant with his first grandchild. No, and he's had more grandchildren than this. But her husband works in the dirt work, and she was out at one of his job sites and smelled the dirt and wanted to eat the dirt. Like it was like,
oh, that's funny.
It was
she
had like this craving.
She's deficient in something.
Yeah,
she's craving dirt. That's
eat dirt.
That's a nutrient deficiency probably. We'll get to that too.
Interesting.
But anyway, so that's sort of like not being active, eating a lot of garbage, Big Macs because that's what you crave, whatever. And then, but being like, but I would never have a glass of wine and I would never eat deli meat because those are the things for whatever reason by us have been sanctioned as unsafe and irresponsible, which there's really not a lot of good science behind that. Versus, it's almost been, at least up till now, taboo to see a woman like in the gym while pregnant. And there's all these weird things that we just believe, like, oh, you have to eat way more than you were eating before. You have to eat this many carbohydrates. And a lot of it is not founded in good science at all. A lot of it's very outdated. And I just think we have it really backwards. So I want to have this conversation to be helpful, not to make anybody feel bad. I mean, there's a lot of things that I know now, even that back when, because it's been a while, like Cash, our baby he's going to be 10. He's almost 10. Almost so it's 10. Been basically 10 years since I had my last baby. And I did, obviously I'm big into fitness. So I did a great job staying very active. I was probably more active than the average woman, but that makes sense because I'm a more active.
You ran half marathon.
I didn't. You always say that.
No, you did. You ran like some sort of marathon.
I did not. It's just a story. You've
I remember it that way. And
I
think whatever anybody walks away from the shows that they should just know that you can have a glass of wine and you can work out. That's the biggie on the eye chart.
You can do both things. Yeah, I didn't run.
And you can do both at the same time.
I was really active, but a lot of the more
put it in your water bottle.
A lot of the like nutritional stuff that I've learned, some of the hormonal stuff, just some of the more complex things that are going on in our bodies. I wish I knew more back then, so this is not, to make anybody feel bad, but I want to talk about a little bit, what are some things on the health and the exercise side we could do before pregnancy, right? And then during, and then if we have time after, because you don't want to forget postpartum. That's a whole nother ballgame.
Maybe one thing we should, maybe this, I don't know if this is, I don't even know what the best time to do caveat, but one of the caveats is in this whole conversation is, especially during pregnancy, your body's got all sorts of crazy hormonal things going on. And so, don't act like, if you're a special case, treat yourself like a special case.
Oh, yeah. I mean, of course.
We've known women who after pregnancy, their body wigs out and, does all sorts of crazy things or massive weight gain, whatever. So, don't act like some of the generalizations we're going to be saying here or talking here may or may not apply to you.
Of course not. Yeah. And that's all we can really do is speak to the, the general population, the norm. There can be many exceptions in pregnancy. You might have all some sort of condition. You might be put on bed rest for good reason. And you can't do any of these exercise things we're talking about. And that's completely understandable. We're clearly not talking to you. Okay.
I feel better. We got the exceptions
my goodness.
out of the
all
way.
right. All right. We nuanced that thing.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Well, let's talk first about before pregnancy. So this would be true for anyone who's thinking about getting pregnant, wants to be pregnant, or just wants to be like, okay, I know sometime here in the next couple of years, maybe we'd like to start a family or have another baby or whatever.
Yeah.
What are some things that you can do to set yourself up for success? And again, this would fall under the category of us thinking long-term. Okay. Because we're all really good about thinking about like what we want right now, what sounds good right now.
We're too
what
pre-mill
right
in our thinking.
Yeah.
And our fitness thinking.
Too pre-mill. So there's a lot of things you can do on the exercise front. Okay. And some of you might have heard this before, and I'm going to say it. Sorry, Jody Larson. Yeah, I feel you, girl. Jody says, my OB told me to eat and gain whatever, and it was okay because I was underweight. I regret it immensely. I know there's some really bad advice out there, you guys. This is one of the reasons pregnant women are so confused because even the OBs, some of them are saying crazy stuff. So I'm sorry.
But it to some extent, if you are underweight and you're having a baby, I mean, shouldn't you try to make sure you're healthy weight for the pregnancy?
Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Yes. Okay. But we'll go in order. So on the exercise side, guys, if you're thinking about, okay, I'm not pregnant yet, but I'm going to be, or I want to be, whatever. This is a crucial time because exercise, strength training, some cardiovascular training is, in my opinion, very, very important during pregnancy. It's one of the number one ways that you can manage your weight gain. Obviously, you're going to gain some weight, but we're trying to minimize excessive weight gain because that can lead to things like preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, things that are truly not ideal, not optimal for your health as a mother, and just as much not optimal for your baby.
It can affect the health of the
baby.
And
generally speaking, a very good common theme that I know will sound very obvious, but I think based off of the way I see certain people behave and even some of the advice that I hear doctors give, Jody's example is a perfect example. Just remember, generally speaking, almost all the time, the healthier you are as the mom, the healthier your baby will be.
Yeah.
The healthier you are as a mom, the healthier the baby will be. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So, you may have heard someone say this before, but in a lot of ways, what your fitness level is, so we're specifically talking about exercise here, going into your pregnancy will in many ways dictate how much you're able to do during that pregnancy. Right. Now, I'm going to caveat this right away because if you go into pregnancy having done nothing, I was not walking, I was not jogging, I was not strength training, I did nothing. You know what I mean? And then you're like, crisis, like, oh no, I messed up. I what can I do? You still can do some things, barring complications, right? And again, we're assuming we're talking to a normal, healthy mom, generally no complications, a normal pregnancy. There are some things you can do. And I would encourage you, if you're in that position, to still do those things. All right. You'd probably want to work with a trainer who really understands these things, right, and get on board with a doctor who encourages you to do it and also kind of understands these things. Also, I would do that. I would do it with that feedback loop going all the time, but you can start walking. You can start light, gentle strength training. Yeah. You can do those things. Okay. So it's not like it's a death sentence and you just have to sit on your couch because you didn't do any prep before. However, if you are not back squatting your body weight before pregnancy, you will not begin back squatting your body weight once you get pregnant. It is a bad idea. Okay. It is a bad idea. And it is just not the time. And some women, and I'm really trying to star this because a lot of women who really take quite poor care of their body, something switches in their mind sometimes, not always, but sometimes when they realize that they're pregnant and they're taking care of another human being.
Yep. And then they want to get healthy.
And then they want to get healthy. And I mean,
Like,
you know, I get it. Like
Yeah.
you're just like, oh gosh, this matter. I don't want to get gestational diabetes. I
Yeah.
don't want to have a baby with a huge birth weight or problems because I'm treating my body like garbage.
Yeah.
So they're like, what can I do? So you can do some things, but you will be so much better off if
you're
you
doing it
start
beforehand.
before.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
And this really, generally speaking, you want, if you can, you want to go into pregnancy with good, number one, good habits. Because let me tell you, when that morning sickness hits, getting yourself to get up and go to the gym gets a little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it's so debilitating that you can't, and that's fine. Sometimes it's like low grade nausea or low to medium grade nausea, which is what I dealt with, where I could go to the gym. It just didn't sound good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that habit is not already in place, you will quit. And I mean, I can almost put 100% guarantee stamp on that. And I know that from 20 years of experience. Like that's just not the time, generally speaking, to start a new habit. That's a challenging habit. Okay.
Yeah. So clarification here. If you're running a couple miles a week before pregnancy, generally speaking, it's okay to do that kind of through pregnancy as long as you're able to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
but if you aren't running, a couple miles before pregnancy, and then you're like, oh, I need to wake up and I'm gonna start running a couple miles a week, that's probably
not the time
not yet to start that.
I mean, and it would be a case.
I would pull a hammy.
It would be a case by case thing. But if you add in the nausea, the lower energy, the slow gradual weight gain, the relaxin that is making you more hypermobile and more injury prone, and we'll kind of touch on these things as we talk.
Yeah,
it's just not going to be a smart time to go to add in way more intensity, way more weight, way more volume, whatever it is, But you could certainly start walking.
Right.
Maybe you could walk jog if you were your body felt good. And obviously, you kind of let how you feel be your guide. Again, you let symptoms be your guide, and this is again barring any complications. But yeah, that's what I mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, so you could do something that wasn't as drastic, but you're generally going to be limited by what you are already doing and what your body is accustomed to. So what I was saying was you want to go into pregnancy with good habits, a solid strength base, a strong pelvic floor. That is huge because pregnancy obviously become a very limiting factor for a lot of women, both during their pregnancy and after. So you want to really be on top of that. And some decent cardiovascular fitness, because that's that kind of training is the kind that you want to continue throughout your pregnancy for the health of your own body and therefore the health of your baby's body. Right. And it is very hard to start when you're pregnant, or what often happens is I got to wait till this morning sickness is done. And, 15
2 months into it, 3 months into
weeks
it.
later, by then it's like, it's just not going to happen. So you want to have those habits set. All right. You want your body to be in the best, healthiest condition it can be in. And then same on the nutritional side. You really want to have established. And again, a lot of the things I'm going to say to you guys about being pregnant or before pregnancy or after pregnancy, I mean, a lot of the rules are the same as they would for any person. You want to be eating nutrient rich food. You want to be eating mostly whole food. Right. You need your diet to be protein centric, right? So you can build the muscle that we're trying to build with our, whatever. And especially because you're about to, or your plan is to then go support the growing of another human being. So protein's really important for that.
Just add here. I know this is kind of a bigger picture thing, but oftentimes what happens is a woman gets pregnant and then she's like, well, now I really can't work out now. Because I wasn't working out before. Now I really can't work out now. And then she has the baby. And then, sometimes a quick turnaround into another pregnancy. Yeah. Or let's say a mom has, 6 years of having kids, be about three kids, 4 kids, kind of thing, be long. Yeah. And then she's like, okay, now I'm going to get my body back in shape. And at this point you need ab surgery or something, so kind of, thinking long-term about this will likely save you from surgery, give you probably a better experience of being pregnant in the process. I don't know, every birth's different, so may or may not help you with your birth depending on the scenario, right?
Overall,
because you could end up in a C-section, whatever.
Totally, that's true.
But it'll help you, have a better experience during pregnancy and then kind of what after, which what you were saying a little bit earlier, but afterwards, a better, what do you
like recovery?
Yeah, recovery. That was 100%. The word. Yeah.
I would say that the fitter you are going into each pregnancy, not just your first one, but taking the time to pull your body back together in between each one, ladies. Yeah. Hear me on that. Okay.
Yep.
Do not take that approach.
Your
And
recovery will
women
be
do it all
faster.
the
Right,
time where it's
right.
like, well, I'm just going to get pregnant again and again and again, and I'll just get in shape at the end.
Yep.
That can be catastrophic. And it's
Yeah.
hard because especially when you've had one baby and you're like, I know I'm going to have another one. Why am I
Yeah.
doing this? You know,
Right.
I'm just going to do this all over again. And I know that it's
Right.
hard to take the time and put the effort in to
Right.
rehab your abs, rehab your pelvic floor, but it is 100% worth it.
Right.
I do believe it helps often. And I've talked to several nurses and midwives who have said, oh yeah, the women who exercise regularly handle birth markedly differently
Yeah. Okay.
than women who don't. That's anecdotal, but I 100% believe it.
Yeah.
It is true that every birth is different.
Yeah.
You could be someone who hasn't picked up a dumbbell in your life and just be like this birthing machine.
Yeah.
Just be like,
Yeah.
I'm just really good at it. You know what I mean?
You
It
just
goes
had a
great.
hiccup and the baby came
Yeah,
out,
exactly. Or you could be like the fittest girl in all the land
Right.
and you have a horribly difficult labor. That can happen. And
Right.
some of those things are out of our control. But I would say there's even more of a correlation to your recovery.
Yeah.
With just where you were at going into pregnancy and what you decided to do during pregnancy. So that's a very good point. So just really one more touch on the before pregnancy part. We were talking about nutrition. So just the more whole food, nutrient rich diet you can have is going to, help your health in general, increase your odds of being able to get pregnant because that can be an issue for some people. And blood sugar regulation, is a huge issue with just being able to conceive. A lot of the root cause of a lot of issues, PCOS, a lot of other things that can cause women to not be able to have a baby is really due to blood sugar being way too high or unmanaged. So whether or not you are you have something like PCOS, something, diagnosed like that, you really should get some blood work done. I think it's a responsible thing to do.
Right.
Look at your B vitamin levels, look at your vitamin D, look at your insulin, because a lot of women, I think, I'm going to say a lot of things here that are science-based and a lot of things also that are just my opinion. A lot of women, I believe, go into pregnancy with poorly managed blood sugar or insulin and don't know it. And those are the ones that have a really rough time and or end up with gestational diabetes. And so sometimes it's like, it kind of feels out of the blue. Like, why do I have this? But it's because they were poorly regulating their insulin and blood sugar oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes beforehand, and they didn't know. So getting some some labs done, if there's some gaping holes, you can get to work on that because having managed blood sugar in particular is so important and so helpful going into pregnancy because, and we'll talk about a little bit about this more, the insulin and all the different changes that happen during pregnancy, it just becomes way more of a challenge because of some of the physiological things that happen during a pregnancy. So the more managed you can be in terms of your blood sugar going into it, the better. And I would also, if you're trying to get pregnant, get on a good prenatal. Then don't wait until you're pregnant. Okay. Just to cover all your nutrient bases because getting all the right nutrients for your baby is a really big deal. And just make sure that prenatal has folate in it, not folic acid. And I'll just say right here, Thorne, the brand Thorne makes an excellent one. There's other good ones out there too, but I'll just say that right now.
Okay.
That's a good thing to do ahead of time. Okay. So I think that's good. I'm sure they're covering any questions. Okay. So let's get into in pregnancy. Okay. You're pregnant, feet on the stick. Yay. It's positive. Baby's coming. On the exercise side, and we've already kind of hinted on this, you absolutely can and should, if you're able, exercise while pregnant. Okay. And again, if you have some contraindication, if your doctor's like, you can't, here's why, I don't know, placenta previa, something, listen to your doctor. I am not, I'm not talking to you, but most women are fairly healthy and go into pregnancy perfectly fine and perfectly capable of exercising in some capacity. Now, like we already said, a lot of what you're able to do and able to handle is going to be dictated by what you were doing before. So again, if you can, get on it, okay? But even if you weren't doing anything, you can start walking regularly. You can start a light, intelligent strength training routine. And again, get with a trainer or a program who knows what they're doing. And there's
because
really...
the last thing you want to do is like pull your back out while you're pregnant too.
Yes,
It's like,
yes.
if you aren't
There's
like
things to watch
getting
out for.
good consultation on this and you're just working your way into
You're
working
just
out
going for it. Yeah. You just
Yeah.
need to, and I'll even touch on a couple of the things you want to watch out for with regards to exercise with pregnancy. But really, you guys, overall, so many benefits come from exercising while pregnant. I mean, it helps with your aches and your pains a lot of time. Just movement helps a lot. Keeping muscles, especially specific muscles, strong, like your glutes, your back muscles, because everything about pregnancy is like the perfect storm for joint pain because it pulls you forward for obvious reasons, like baby, nursing, everything. It's just, it pulls you forward.
It's all here. Yeah.
Yes. And so a lot of neck issues, a lot of back issues, and you're hypermobile. So you put those two things together, no wonder pregnant women are like, I hurt everywhere. My feet hurt, my knees, like everything hurts. If you're exercising smartly, you can really help yourself out with that and become, and like Gabe said, just enjoy your pregnancy a lot more and be a lot more of a functional mom while you're pregnant, because it's a really long time to just sort of sit out. You know what I mean? And like, again, if you have to,
at least 9 months, not mention recovery,
it's 40 weeks, on average. So like, and again, we deal in the things that we can control. If God decides to give you twins and you end up on bed rest, you're on bed rest, and that's okay. And then you work with it, and that's fine, right? Well, we do whatever we need to do. But like, if you can help it, and you can be more functional and feel better and not be in pain all the time and not be able to lift anything because your muscles aren't strong enough, that would be great, right? Especially if this is not your first child, because it is not the same. Having your first kid, when you can just go sit down whenever you want because you don't have any other kids, you can go take a nap whenever you want. When that second kid rolls around, it is a whole different game. Like you're still a parent. So this is really, really important. I mean, obviously exercise will help you manage your weight gain. And this, ladies, this is a big deal. I mean, a lot of, I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. I really am not. But a lot of women go into pregnancy overweight. And even for a healthy body, the recommended or what's considered a normal healthy amount of weight gain during a pregnancy would be anywhere from like 25 to 30, maybe 35 pounds. A lot of us ladies are gaining way more than that. And exercise can really help with that. And if you gain 60, 70, 80 pounds with each pregnancy, don't take care of it afterwards and then get pregnant again and then get pregnant again, it can really compound and it can really hurt your health. And if you get to a certain point weight wise, and this is true even for people who aren't pregnant, just anyone, if you get to a certain point weight wise, you can't move. It hurts too much. You know what I mean? So it really does. It's a big deal to try as best you can with reasonable things to keep your body at a healthy weight. And of course, in a pregnancy, you're going to be heavier than you are when you're not pregnant, obviously, but we want to try to manage that in a healthy way. And exercise is a great way to help that. Nutrition too, maybe even more, but exercise helps. And it will specifically help manage or prevent gestational diabetes and preeclampsia, which we just talked about. And Gabe, you already touched on this. It helps with labor and recovery and so many different things. And I just want to point this out also, ladies. Birth is an incredibly intense athletic event. I mean, that is the best way to look at it. And gentlemen, any of you who have witnessed a birth, seen a birth, I mean, been there for your kids' birth, you know this, okay? It is intense. It is painful. It can last a very long time, longer than a marathon.
A couple days.
I mean, it's like running several marathons for a lot of women. Like it's an intense athletic event. And I just like, in what other area of your life would you know? Because this is a guaranteed event. You get pregnant, you're going to have that baby, right? Like it's kind of guaranteed. You can't back out of this race. In what other area of your life would you sign up for, let's say a marathon, and just not train for it? And just be like, I'm just going to show up on race day. I'll eat a cookie and I'll just run. Like that's crazy, right? I mean, and there are people that do that and they're almost always full of regret and injury. So like, why would you not train wisely for this incredibly athletic event so that it goes the best possibly for you, which will then mean it's going the best possibly for your baby and also help you with your recovery, all the things. So, we just have so many disconnects. I just think it's weird. I mean, there's nothing unathletic or unsport-like about
having a baby.
It's incredibly, it's an incredibly big demand on your body. So training for it, I think, is wise and makes a lot of sense. Now, on that note, just really quick, some things, and we could probably do an entire episode, and I'm not opposed to it down the road about exercise during pregnancy, because there's a lot of specifics. People tend to have a lot of questions, but I'll just hit the big ones that you want to watch out for. Generally speaking, at least for me, I went into all my pregnancies already running, spinning, lifting weights, so my body was totally accustomed to all those things. And I really generally continued to do most of those things all the way through. I mean, so that generally there will be
days
exceptions.
Before you went in labor.
I was still squatting. I was still deadlifting. I was still pressing overhead. I was still doing now granted, there will be some obvious things that need to go as that baby grows. Number one, ab work. And I can't even tell you, ladies, how many women, especially, it hasn't happened as much. Maybe we're wising up, but like years ago, people constantly, they'd just be like, how can I strengthen my abs while I'm pregnant. What crunches can I do while I'm pregnant? And I'm just like, guys, you know, like your abs only job during pregnancy is to expand.
Right.
Like you have to let go of that.
It's going the opposite way.
Yeah, you have to let that go. And the thing is with these girls is I was like, you can work on strengthening any other muscle in your body and it would be great for you. Just not your abs. You have to let your abs go. Like just let them go. Their job is to stretch. Like all you're doing is like dysfunctionally engaging your abs and bearing down on your baby when you do a crunch. So please let that go. Okay. And obviously you don't need to until that baby gets big enough, comes up out of your pelvis, you know. So for most women, that's around the time when you get out of the first trimester. Usually there can be exceptions there. So ab work's got to go. Obviously also things where your belly is just mechanically in the way. So like a push up from the ground at a certain point, your belly's going to hit before your chest hits. So you're going to have to elevate or do something different, but those are pretty obvious. Beyond that, there's really not a lot you can't do. Barring injury, barring complication. Obviously, you listen to your body, you listen to your doctor, find a good doctor who is on board with you doing this stuff. If your doctor's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, find a new doctor. You also need to keep in mind that your hips are widening for obvious reasons. So I found that like my squat stance from where I started in pregnancy to where I finished, you know, like at the end was wider. My grip had to widen for like my clean and my deadlift. Just because everything had widened. And so you just have to make sure that you make, you know, you understand that. And I referred to the hormone relaxin earlier. It's a hormone that really starts circulating, as far as I know, as soon as you get pregnant. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it maintains all the way through nursing even. So you have that going on postpartum until you wean your baby. But relaxin just basically causes all the joints in your body to loosen, which you need for delivery. So it's a great thing, but it makes you, generally speaking, hypermobile, which I would say does set women up to be a little more injury prone. Just like
what do you mean by hypermobile?
That just means you have more laxity in your joints than you would or did have before you were pregnant. And you'll feel it. Like I've had a lot of girls be like, you know, my kneecap's like moving around and it kind of hurts, or like my elbows are catching, and that just never used to happen. Yeah. And that's relaxing and it will go away. You know, God's
doing that. He's getting your body loose and
exactly,
ready.
but you need to watch out for that. So I generally say, just be aware. And if you were doing a lot of like plyometric, explosive type training beforehand, it's not to say that you can't keep doing that, but possibly you might want to back down on that a little bit, just because you are more hypermobile, you're less stable, and because of that, a little more prone to injury, if that makes sense. So I just, you know, just being aware of it is really helpful. And then lastly, I'll just say on the exercise front, like you do want to watch out for your abs. Any movement that is going to cause your abs to cone or tent, which is basically just dysfunctional ab contraction. Diastasis recti, as many of you know, is simply just that separation of that linea alba of our abdominals when we're pregnant. And by the time you're full term, every woman has it. There's no way that you don't have that. It's perfectly normal, and it's part of the design to make room for that baby. But you want to watch out for any movements. You know, trying to do crunches is an obvious one. Your abs are going to look like they're going to totally tent. But also, a lot of times as women get farther along in their pregnancy, they notice that coning or that dysfunctional ab contraction, trying to do something like maybe a pull-up or maybe even pressing overhead, other movements where your abs would be heavily involved, sometimes even a push-up. So you just need to watch out for that, because you want to minimize that. A little is kind of impossible to avoid, because they're just there, they're being active. You'll see that happen when you get out of bed, you know, so you don't need to be like panicked about it. But watch out for that, because what we want to do is minimize unnecessary separation and minimize kind of that muscle habit of dysfunctionally contracting, so that when you go to rehab your abs after baby, you have a better chance at pulling them back together and getting that functional ab contraction. So do watch out for that, especially in like that last trimester. And that's kind of it. Like you really can go for it and just listen to your body. One last thing might be worth mentioning. At least the science that I've read up to this point, you do want to watch also overheating, especially for a really long period of time. And I here in Idaho, it's like barely even an issue. If you lived somewhere where it was really hot and you were like, I'm going to go for a 10-mile run, maybe watch your core temperature. Generally, that's why pregnant women
don't stay in the hot tub long.
They don't sauna. They don't tend to get in the hot tub. I would like to see better research. Pregnant women, you guys, are horribly researched. Nobody wants to touch them with a 10-foot pole. So it's lacking. You're not going to see the same studies done on pregnant women as you are like men, because men are a lot safer and easier to study. So we're going off what we know, but I think better to be safe than sorry. Just watch your core temperature. But if you're doing like a 30, 45 minute HIIT session, you're fine. You're perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So yeah. And just listen to your body. You get lightheaded, ease off a little. If you feel like super nauseous, ease off a little. Your body will talk to you. And again, a lot of that just comes down to oftentimes just kind of what condition you were in going into it. And the better condition you were, the better.
Right.
So anyways, so those are my thoughts on, do you have anything you want to add about the exercise thing?
I mean, I've never been pregnant, so I'm
do you want to mansplain the pregnant whatever? Okay, well, let's talk about nutrition during pregnancy. And this is a really big one. And I'm probably going to say some things here that are controversial, and I don't care. And this is interesting. I just said this. I said, there are a lot of things that I've learned more recently. I've read, I've researched, whatever, that I wish I knew back then. And it's funny because some of the things that I've learned more recently have made things that I knew to be true, but didn't have a reason for, all make sense. So on the nutrition side with pregnancy, what I've always known, and my doctor, Dr. Manudri, way back in the day, he was excellent. He was such a great doctor. He was so supportive of how active I was. And even he back then was like, yeah, there's no studies for this. I remember asking him one time, what do you think about me doing handstand push-ups while pregnant? And he was like, I have no idea. Because I was like, they feel great. I don't get lightheaded. I feel great. But I was like, is it gonna flip my baby? You know? And he was like, I do not know. Like, just there's no studies on this, you know. So it was just a really hilarious time. But he was great. He back in the day said, and he was ahead of his time, he was like, you do not need carbs when you're pregnant. And he didn't mean like don't eat any, but most women are coming in there just shoving their faces full of carbs and not healthy carbs either. That's what he's talking about. He was like, and I remember telling you this, he was like, carbs are for endurance athletes and children. And he was like so hard lined about it. And I was very active and eating probably moderately high carb at the time. So I was fine ish, but like, I remember that. And I just remember being like, okay, that makes sense. And something that I've noticed is that I've known that women while pregnant, at least in the second half of pregnancy, seem much more insulin insensitive.
Okay.
And that's right around the time where gestational diabetes tends to hit. Okay. Right, like kind of that midway point. That's when they make you do that discussing glucose tolerance test, because they know that's about the time when women's blood sugar just tends to get really out of control. Even some women who are like lean and look healthy, right? But, and so my thought for
real quick before you go into your thought there, what do you mean by insulin insensitive? So, I've heard you use the term insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
What do you mean by insulin?
So insulin sensitivity is generally pregnant or not. Anyone. Insulin sensitivity is what you want. That means you have cells that are sensitive to insulin, taking the glucose or the blood sugar out of your bloodstream and depositing them into like your muscle cells so you can use them for energy. So insulin is a hormone that clears the blood sugar, and you need your body to be sensitive to it, or else it'll come knock on the door of your muscle cells or whatever, and the door won't open, and then your pancreas will crank out more and more and more. Blood sugar will build up and up and up because you can't clear it. Does that make sense? So it's really a huge, and we've talked about this before, a huge marker of general health in the short term and the long term for every human being. Just your ability to manage insulin, and even more so, it's an issue for pregnant women because our bodies do some weird stuff during pregnancy, which we can't totally control. So that's why we need to pay attention to our diet. So I've always known, okay, it just seems like women who are pregnant, at least at the end, should go lower carb. We can't handle carbs very well. Our body go like on purpose does not handle carbs very well. And that is what my doctor said back in the day. But I just didn't really, there's been no ketogenic studies. Like no one's going to take a bunch of pregnant women and make them eat zero carbs and see what happens. Like no one's going to do that.
That's going to go well.
However, one of my, and this has sort of been kind of just on the DL, the advice I've been giving women for years is like, listen, you don't, the daily recommended allowance is like 175 grams of carbs a day, which I think
is that for pregnant women or for just normal?
Pregnant women.
Okay. Okay.
It kind of got pulled out of nowhere. And a lot of women do very poorly eating that many carbs, especially towards the second half of their pregnancy. They do not, they end up with preeclampsia. They end up with gestational diabetes. They're gaining way more weight than their body needs. It all affects their baby. It's not good. However, when you're early pregnant and really sick or really nauseous, which many women are, protein sounds terrible. Usually the only thing that you couldn't even possibly think about stomaching are like crackers. Like think of the things that you want to eat if you're really nauseous or you're coming off the stomach flu.
Right.
Is it nuts and meat? Like that sounds awful. Like
Right.
and you also oftentimes in the first trimester have a lot of food aversions. Like a lot of girls are like, I can't even look at chicken, and they're not joking. Like it's like,
Mhm.
bleh. So interestingly, and I'm going to go ahead and plug someone that I really recommend. If you guys are interested in this, like nutrition, how I should be eating while pregnant and why. There is this lady named Lily Nichols, and I am a huge fan of her. She has a book that I'm halfway through right now called Real Food for Pregnancy. She has another book called Real Food for Gestational Diabetes, and it is phenomenal, like phenomenal. And it is one of the more heavily cited, like she really digs deep into the research and really backs up what she says. One of the most cited books I have seen on pregnancy. She is a registered dietitian, a nutritionist, and a diabetes educator. So if you just want to deep dive more, go look her up. Find a podcast she's on, find her website, anything. Her stuff is so good. And she broke, as more recently, it kind of helped me understand why both of those things are true.
Right.
And some of the things that she has referenced in her book is that when you're early pregnant, as soon as you get pregnant, your body actually starts producing a lot more insulin, like a lot more. Your pancreas just starts cranking insulin out. So women's blood sugar, because of that, because you have so much more insulin clearing blood sugar on the regular, women's blood sugar in at least the first trimester, actually trends lower.
Wow.
And that makes nausea make sense.
Okay.
It makes the reason that you are always wanting to snack to try to bring your blood sugar back up. And, nausea oftentimes is totally connected to blood sugar. I'm not saying it's the only thing. There's also some hormonal shifts that can happen that can totally add to the morning sickness, nausea, whatever as well. And she also said that they've seen that you are still more insulin sensitive at that time. So you can actually get away with eating more carbohydrates. Now, I would still claim that during pregnancy, the number one emphasis, no matter what you're eating or how much or whatever, you're eating real, whole, nutrient-dense food, because that is what your baby needs. Okay, your baby does not need a Big Mac. You might feel like having a Big Mac, but what your baby needs is nutrients. Okay, so like nutrient-dense whole food. So your chicken, or beef, whatever, any meat. Okay, any meat you can get down in the beginning. You can handle it more probably later. Eggs, good quality dairy, vegetables, fruit. That should be the staple of your diet. But I just thought, that is so cool that God created us that way, that when you're really sick and you're craving these kinds of food, you have the insulin sensitivity to kind of manage that.
Yeah.
Like you can handle it and it's okay. So what I tell my ladies usually is, listen, we're trying to eat high protein. We're creating another human being. So if there's ever a time to eat high protein, it's pregnancy. But I completely understand. In that first trimester, if all you can get down are some crackers, fine. Do what you have to do. You're not ruining your baby. And you should, if you have been eating really nutrient dense leading up to your pregnancy, which you should have, we already talked about that. You've got some stores built up in your body. You can afford, and so can your baby, for you to not eat super nutritiously for several weeks because you're so sick out of your mind.
Right.
And if you're not sick, if you're one of those lucky girls, bring on the protein there. Bring on the fruits and vegetables as best you can. And then as the pregnancy kind of moves on and you get past like around the halfway point, that's when our body starts to become very, very insulin insensitive. And that's when the gestational diabetes tends to show up. So it all makes a lot of sense.
It seems to be just kind of just like a logical flow too of pregnancy, where you get pregnant and your body is basically reacting in such a way, or your insulin's reacting in such a way where it's better for you to eat a little more food at the beginning of that pregnancy than maybe towards the end of the pregnancy, right?
I mean,
so it's kind of like,
I don't know if I'd say more or less. I think it's more like the types of food that you can handle.
Maybe at the beginning of pregnancy, saying, okay, I need more carbs, and at the end of pregnancy, maybe I just need a little meat or protein or something.
Yeah, and you
like
do.
that.
I think that you do, and that's what I'm going to say. I'm really going to suggest that as you get closer to the second half of your pregnancy, specifically the third trimester, and what do you know? Usually, food aversions are gone by then. Not always. But usually you're not as nauseous. You don't have these food aversions.
You don't need pickles and peanut butter.
And you can eat meat. And I would say bring your carbs down a little. I'm not saying you need to be totally ketogenic.
Yeah.
I'm just saying bring them down because your body does not handle them well.
Right.
And it's just like, you should eat as nutritive, high nutritive value food that you can possibly eat as unprocessed as you can, prioritize your protein, and keep your carbs moderate. And I think that is really one of the best recommendations for women. Now, again, you should be monitoring your blood sugar. Your doctor is usually doing that. You can kind of see how you're doing, based off of that. And that blood test usually won't lie to you. So there are some women who can tolerate more carbohydrates and there's others who can tolerate less. But it doesn't seem like a healthy recommendation to be eating 300 grams of carbs a day of highly processed or refined food, because that's just what you feel like eating at a time when your baby needs nutrients and protein more than anything, and your body does not handle carbohydrates very well. So that's my main point. And again, read her book, because she goes deep into this stuff. I think it makes a ton of sense. And her citing all that, all those studies and some of the scientific, things behind it really connected some dots for me. And I really appreciated that. So, and I will also say, if you do, when you are eating your carbohydrates, because just managing blood sugar in pregnancy in general, both at the start where it tends to trend low and then later when it tends to trend high, is really the challenge. So when you do eat carbohydrates, try to keep them again as real as possible. So like your sweet potato, squash, maybe some blueberries, maybe some homemade sourdough, that kind of thing. Pair it. Don't eat them naked, as we say. Don't eat them by themselves. Pair it with a protein or a healthy fat, and that will pretty decently kind of blunt the curve in terms of the, kind of the glycemic reaction that you have. And that's really helpful too. Okay. So I think that's, and lastly, in terms of, a lot of women ask about what specific nutrients you should be like emphasizing or trying to get a lot of while pregnant. You want to obviously get on a prenatal just to check all your boxes, make sure that prenatal has folate in it. And I would say folate, choline, and glycine are some of the biggest three that your baby will really appreciate in their development. So make sure you're getting those.
Yeah.
All right. How are we doing on time?
We got plenty of time. No, actually, you need to go pick up our kids.
I got to pick up my kids in like 5 minutes. Do you want to just like touch on postpartum?
Let's touch on it and let's close out.
All right. Oh my gosh, how do I keep this short? Okay, we can always come back to it. Postpartum is I feel like it's the part of pregnancy that nobody reads about or talks about, and everybody just thinks and plans up till labor and delivery. And then postpartum is like this whole rodeo that they're like, no one told me.
Yeah.
No one told me
Yeah.
what's happening. So there's a lot to say, but in terms of the exercise side, we already touched on this, but I cannot reiterate enough how important it is for you to rehab your core and your pelvic floor. Just do it in order to be alive for the rest of your life, but specifically and especially do it before you go and get pregnant again. It's a really big deal. It just can exponentially get worse with
Every
each pregnancy.
time.
Yes. And you have to take the time.
Yep.
Now, for some of us, that might mean actually going to a physical therapist who specializes in
rehab,
that postpartum rehab. It's a
Yeah.
real thing for an obvious reason, because a lot of women that you come out of pregnancy and birth just messed up, right?
Yeah.
And so go see a PT if you need to. I will also say though, if you're like, I don't think I need PT, I just need to know where to start, because most of you know, like if you just had a baby, you don't just start doing crunches, right? That can do more harm than good, because again, our abs they're going to do the same thing that they did when you were pregnant. Do that coney thing. When we need to figure out how to draw them together and down, you can retrain them. You just need to know how to do it and do it very gently. So there's a lot of programs out there that you can get on, a lot of free content, really. So there's a lot of great resources. One that I found recently is called Strong Mama Wellness. And I've kind of looked through her stuff and looked through her. She has a particular plan that you can buy called Core Revival, and it's really good. So if you're looking for something like, okay, I know I'm not ready to just throw myself into Pilates class yet. I need something in between to kind of help me pull my abs and practice breathing and do all the things that we need to do. Check her out. And she also has a podcast. Her name is Nicole. I can't remember her last name, but it's the Strong Mama podcast. It's all about a very digestible, short little podcast about exercise during pregnancy, postpartum, all that. And she's great. She's an exercise physiologist and has a lot of great things to say. And her Core Revival plan looks really good. So if you're looking for something along those lines, do that. And I'm just going to say one more time to reiterate, let's go back to the marathon analogy. Let's say you ran the marathon that we talked about before. Let's say you tore your ACL. Would you go run another marathon before you repaired your ACL? I think no, that would be crazy, right? And I want you to think of your core and your pelvic floor the same way. You need to let them heal. You need to rehab them before you go run another marathon. It's a very, very big deal for so many different reasons. So take it seriously and make sure you get that done. And then on the nutrition side, this is a really fun time, especially if you're breastfeeding, which most women try to do. And if you're not able, of course, that's fine. But your metabolic rate increases quite a bit at this point because you are producing all of this nutrition for your baby. So this is probably the time when women are the most hungry. And it can be like really crazy how hungry you are. And Also, you are more insulin sensitive again at this time. So if there's ever a time to load up a little more on healthy carbohydrates.
Are you specifically referring to like the second trimester?
No, I'm talking to postpartum, like when you're nursing your baby. So after you've had your baby, you become more insulin sensitive again when you're producing milk. So interestingly, insulin sensitivity, comes back up, which you want. Metabolic rate comes up because your body is working hard to, produce all this nutrition. So if there ever is a good time to maybe, and it's a little experimental, but to bring up your carb intake a little bit, this would be it. So I really recommend women, towards the second half of their pregnancy, bring those carbs down a little bit. Your body is not handle them well. Now it's going to handle them better. I'm not saying go crazy, and everybody's different. And you're usually kind of just finding that balance between, okay, what's going to serve me, my health, help me to feel good, but also not affect my milk supply.
Right.
And it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And so you have to experiment a little bit. And I will say, I've said this before, throw in an electrolyte. Especially if you're also being active, but I would just say if you're nursing, throw in an electrolyte. It's just a really, really good idea. I mean, we could just leave it there.
Okay.
I think we can always come back to this, but yeah,
good place to
I
stop
have
there.
to pick up my children.
Yeah. And if you guys want to ask, Annie, especially, I mean, I might chime in on some of the questions. You can email us at
ask Gabe.
wrenchmedia@gmail.com. Oh, you always get an answer from me.
Yeah, you'll get an answer.
It might not be a good one.
Be like, this is for Gabe. Annie, don't
You
answer.
need to drink more wine during your pregnancy. That's it. That's usually my answer is going to boil down to that.
You need more wine.
wrenchmedia@gmail.com. And then, we're basically streaming live every Thursday as I'm not traveling or as Annie doesn't have a train wreck of a day or something like that.
My life is not in shambles. I will be here.
And it happens.
Yes.
So, but for the most part, we should be streaming every Thursday. Someone actually, I'll answer this question on the way out here. Magnus Connor says, why did you guys have only 3 children? Fair question. Basically, God desires faithful children. It's more about quality than quantity, and God desires children, and so you do what you can handle, what you think you can handle, and that's basically why we felt when we had 3 children, we felt like that was kind of the last one we could handle. It's not don't get stuck on the quantity thing, because you either want to raise 3 faithful children, or you could be in the process of raising 10 unfaithful children because you can't manage it all. Now there are a lot of families that can manage it all. Yeah. So this is not any shot across there at them. It's quality, not quantity. So there you go. Yep. Mr. F, Gabe, how's Knox's arm? Well, it's going to be imbalanced. The toning is going to be imbalanced if he doesn't switch the watches on either arm. This is from an earlier live stream. So there you go. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in to Waterbreak. We'll see you guys next Thursday about the 2:15 Pacific time slot. And of course, you can check out our show after we go live on our app and in the podcast. So if you don't catch it now, or you want to share it with your friends and tell them watch the show, and you can share it through our app or through the podcast, or it'll be finalized on YouTube. You can share a link on YouTube too and everything. So thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. My name is Joe Rigney, Fellow of Theology at New St. Andrews College. The Bible tells us that there are 2 fundamental ways to live: the way of the righteous and the way of the wicked, the way of the wise and the way of the fool, God's way and the world's way. And every one of us must choose which way to follow, which way to live. We make this choice every day of our lives. This summer at the Called Conference in Moscow, Idaho, I want to clarify this choice for you. Using the first chapter of the book of Romans, we'll explore the 2 ways in terms of worship and glory, in terms of manhood, womanhood, sexuality, and in terms of our relationships with other people. The wrath of God is revealed against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. And the pleasure of God is revealed upon all godliness and righteousness of men, who by their righteousness celebrate the truth. The choice of ways is before you. I hope to see you there.
In a world grappling with joblessness, broken homes, and a crisis of purpose, we ask, why does work matter?
There are 1,000 answers to that. The one I like is that work makes us like God.
Well, because God works.
Work matters because you are a provider, and work gives you an avenue for providing for your family.
But that question betrays that a job's not just a 9-to-5 hobby, right? It's an opportunity to bless people. It's an opportunity to bless people at scale.
But the reality is that money is intensely important to Dominion.
I'm Kyle Hessler. I'm a salesman, real estate investor, wrestling promoter, father, husband, and a Christian. And I want to invite you to the first ever Workspace Conference in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, where we aim to glorify God through our work. Come and learn from speakers David Bonson, C.R. Wiley, Steve Jeffrey, David Reese, and Andrew Krapuschitz as we explore the theology of work, how vocations shape cultural dominion, understanding risk, and how to invest not just now, but in future generations. This conference is about action, not just theories. Join us for a prime hub of networking, career growth, and fellowship. We are building a community of impactful connections and collaborative endeavors that seek to extend beyond a single weekend. Join us June 28th and 29th at the Hilton in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. Tickets available at workspace.com. This is more than just a conference. This is a commitment to glorifying God in our work, because we aren't saved by our good works. We are saved by Christ for our good works.